The engine hummed, a familiar song of freedom and independence. I gripped the steering wheel, the worn leather cool under my palms. December air, crisp and biting, swept through the slightly ajar window. It was December 20th, 2 days before Christmas, and I was driving the car I'd given my son and his wife, not to their house for the holidays, but away from it. The reason? A curt message from my daughter-in-law, Sarah. "You don't need to come this year." No explanation, no softening, just a digital dismissal. My heart, usually a steady drumbeat, felt like a trapped bird fluttering frantically against my ribs. I'd bought them that car 2 years ago, a reliable sedan, nothing fancy, but it represented a step up, a symbol of their growing independence, a gift from my heart to theirs. I'd even kept my name on the title and insurance, a little safety net, I told myself, just in case. A foolish thought, it turned out. Now, that safety net felt more like a leash I was about to yank. The key, a small metal testament to my generosity, felt heavy in my pocket. This wasn't about the car, not really. It was about the unspoken, the exclusion, the feeling of being erased from my own family's holiday narrative. As I turned onto the highway, the city lights blurring into streaks of color, I knew this wasn't just a car retrieval. This was a reckoning, a journey that would take me not just miles down the road, but deep into the complex landscape of family, boundaries, and the true meaning of belonging. And it all started with that simple, devastating message. The open road stretched before me, a stark contrast to the tangled emotions churning within. Where was I going? I wasn't entirely sure, but I knew I couldn't stay. The silence in the car was deafening, punctuated only by the rhythmic whoosh of tires on asphalt. Each mile marker was a tick of a clock, counting down to a confrontation I both dreaded and in a strange way welcomed. I rehearsed conversations in my head, scenarios playing out with varying degrees of civility and outright disaster. Would they be angry, hurt, indifferent? Sarah's words echoed, a cold, sharp shard. "You don't need to come this year." What did that even mean? Was it a subtle hint, a polite suggestion, or a firm "don't bother"? The ambiguity was a form of torture. I'd always been the kind of mother who showed up, for birthdays, for school plays, for every minor crisis and major celebration. My son, Mark, had always been the one to call, to ask for advice, to share his life. Sarah, his wife of 5 years, had been welcomed into our family with open arms. Or so I thought. This year, the invitation was rescinded. And the car, my car, was the tangible symbol of my perceived expendability. I pulled into a dimly lit diner, the kind with vinyl booths and the smell of stale coffee. I needed a moment to gather my thoughts, to ground myself before the next phase of this unexpected journey. As I sipped my lukewarm coffee, I watched a family laughing at a nearby table, their faces alight with holiday cheer. A pang of longing, sharp and unexpected, shot through me. Was this what Christmas had become for me? A solitary drive fueled by a sense of injustice? I pulled out my phone, scrolling through old photos. Mark as a gap-toothed kid, Sarah beaming at their wedding, the 3 of us on a family vacation. Memories warm and fuzzy, warred with the cold reality of the present. I took a deep breath. This wasn't about wallowing in self-pity. It was about understanding, about finding a way forward, not just for myself, but for the future of our family. The car was parked just outside, a silent witness to my internal turmoil. I'd driven it here, and I would continue to drive it. But now it represented more than just a gid. It was a tool, a bargaining chip, a symbol of a boundary that had been crossed. The first step, I decided, was to understand the why. Why the sudden exclusion? Why the indirect message? I wasn't going to just accept it and fade into the background. I deserved an explanation, and I was going to get one. The diner's clock ticked on, each second a reminder that time was both a healer and a relentless force. I finished my coffee, paid the bill, and walked back out to the car. The air was colder now, the stars beginning to prick the darkening sky. I started the engine, the familiar rumble a small comfort. My destination was still uncertain, but my resolve was hardening. I was no longer just a mother feeling hurt. I was a woman taking back control, not just of a car, but of my own sense of dignity and place within my family. The road ahead was long, and I suspected the journey would be more emotional than physical. But I was ready. The first 15 seconds of this story were about the shock and the action. Now the real development begins. I started driving towards a different kind of destination, one that required honesty, courage, and a willingness to confront the uncomfortable truths that often lie beneath the surface of family dynamics. My internal monologue shifted. Instead of focusing on the hurt, I began to analyze the situation from a more objective, even psychological perspective. What could have prompted Sarah's message? Was it a reflection of her own insecurities, a communication breakdown, or was there something more significant at play? The act of taking back the car, while emotionally charged, was also a powerful statement. It was a way of saying, I am not invisible, my contributions matter, and my feelings are valid. This wasn't about punishment, but about reclaiming agency. It was about establishing that while I am generous and loving, I also have boundaries. And those boundaries, when crossed, have consequences. I thought about the concept of showing, not telling. My action of taking the car was a powerful show. It communicated my displeasure and my need for clarity without a single word of accusation. Now I needed to continue showing, through my actions and my eventual conversation, that my goal was not to create conflict, but to foster understanding and ultimately reconciliation. The car itself became a symbol. It represented not just my generosity, but also my investment in their lives. Taking it back was a way of saying, if my presence is not valued, then perhaps the tangible symbols of my support should be reevaluated. It was a tough lesson, but sometimes tough lessons are the most effective. I considered the psychology of gift giving. Gifts are often imbued with emotional significance, representing love, care, and connection. When a gift is met with perceived rejection, it can feel like a rejection of the giver themselves. This was the core of my pain. I wasn't just losing a Christmas visit, I was losing a sense of connection. The car, as a significant gift, amplified this feeling. I decided to use the drive to reflect on my own role in the family dynamic. Had I been overbearing? Had I overstepped boundaries in the past? Without realizing it, self-awareness is a crucial part of personal growth, and I was determined to use this experience as an opportunity for it. My journey was becoming a metaphor for a larger internal journey. The physical act of driving was mirroring my emotional and psychological progression. I was moving away from a place of hurt and towards a place of understanding and empowerment. The open road, with its unpredictable turns and vistas, was a perfect parallel to the unfolding family drama. I thought about the different ways people communicate, especially during stressful times like the holidays. Passive aggression, indirect communication, and avoidance are common coping mechanisms. Sarah's message, "You don't need to come this year," fit this pattern. It was an indirect way of expressing something else, something likely more complex. My task was to uncover that underlying message. I remembered a quote I'd read recently: "The greatest communication breakdown is believing that we have heard what was not said." This resonated deeply. I hadn't heard the unspoken message behind Sarah's words. I'd only focused on the sting of exclusion. The car, with its title and insurance still under my name, was a practical decision at the time, a way to ensure it was properly maintained and insured. Now it served a different purpose, a tangible reminder of my continued involvement, even if that involvement was currently under a cloud. It was a leverage point, a way to initiate a conversation that wouldn't otherwise happen. I started to consider the potential reasons for Sarah's message. Was it about finances? Were they struggling and felt embarrassed by my presence? Was it about a new baby? Perhaps they were expecting and Sarah was feeling overwhelmed or protective. Or maybe it was about space. Their home might be small, and hosting guests, especially for an extended holiday period, could be a strain. Each possibility brought a different shade of concern and a different approach to the eventual conversation. The humor in the situation, though dry, began to emerge. The image of me, a woman of a certain age, driving away in the car I'd gifted, felt almost theatrical. It was a scene I could imagine playing out in a quirky indie film. This perspective helped to diffuse some of the raw emotion, allowing for a more strategic approach. I was no longer just reacting, I was planning. The act of taking back the car was the inciting incident. Now, the rising action would involve understanding the why and navigating the consequences. The story was far from over. It was, in fact, just beginning. I thought about the concept of earned media in a personal context. My initial generous act of gifting the car had been met with a negative response. Now, my subsequent action, while seemingly harsh, was designed to elicit a more honest and constructive dialogue. It was a way of forcing the issue, of bringing the unspoken to the surface. I decided to focus on the positive aspects of my relationship with Mark. He was a good son, and despite this current rift, our bond was strong. This was not about him versus Sarah, but about navigating a complex family dynamic. My goal was to preserve my relationship with my son while also establishing healthy boundaries with my daughter-in-law. The car key in my pocket felt like a tangible representation of my power in this situation. It was a reminder that while I had given freely, I also had the right to set conditions and expectations. It was about mutual respect, something that seemed to be lacking in Sarah's message. I began to think about the kind of mother-in-law I wanted to be. I didn't want to be the meddling, overbearing type, but I also didn't want to be the invisible, unacknowledged one. Finding that balance was key. This situation was forcing me to define that balance more clearly than ever before. The drive continued, the miles accumulating, each one bringing me closer to a resolution, or at least to a conversation. The initial shock and anger were beginning to mellow into a more determined resolve. I was no longer just a victim of circumstance. I was an active participant in shaping my family's future. The car was running smoothly, a testament to its good condition, a reminder that gifts, when cared for, can last. But relationships, unlike cars, require constant maintenance, communication, and mutual effort. And it seemed that effort had been one-sided. I decided to stop at a scenic overlook, a place where I could see for miles. The vastness of the landscape mirrored the vastness of the challenge ahead, but it also offered a sense of perspective. From here, the small, immediate problems seemed less daunting. I took out my phone, not to check messages, but to open a new note. I started to jot down points for the conversation I needed to have. Clarify the message, understand the reasons, express my feelings, establish expectations, propose a solution. This structured approach helped me to feel more in control. The car, parked on the gravel, was my temporary sanctuary. It was a space where I could process, plan, and prepare. The holiday season, usually a time of warmth and togetherness, had become a catalyst for a difficult but necessary conversation, and I was ready to have it. The journey was more than just a drive. It was a pilgrimage towards understanding and self-respect. The car, my car, was the chariot carrying me on this unexpected quest. I started the engine again, the sound a steady reassurance. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. It was a beautiful, melancholy sight, much like the situation. I knew the conversation would be difficult, but I also knew it was essential. The silence in the car was no longer just empty space. It was filled with anticipation and a quiet strength. I was heading towards a confrontation, yes, but also towards a potential reconciliation built on a foundation of honesty and clear communication. The car, once a symbol of my generosity, was now a symbol of my boundaries, and that was a powerful realization. I continued driving, the headlights cutting through the gathering dusk. The next part of my journey would involve facing the music, or rather, facing Sarah and Mark. And I was ready to do so, armed with clarity, a calm demeanor, and the unwavering belief that healthy families are built on respect, not exclusion. The narrative was shifting from reaction to proaction. The car was just the beginning of a larger process of reestablishing connection. My journey was about reclaiming my space, not just physically in their lives, but emotionally and psychologically. And the car, that symbol of my love and generosity, was now the key to unlocking that process. The road ahead was still uncertain, but my direction was clear, towards honest communication and a healthier family dynamic. I thought about the power of a single sentence, "You don't to come this year." It had triggered a chain of events, forcing a reevaluation of family roles and expectations. It was a stark reminder that words, even seemingly innocuous ones, carry immense weight. My goal was to ensure that future communication would be more direct, more empathetic, and more inclusive. The car was a tangible asset, but the intangible aspects of family connection were what truly mattered. And I was determined to rebuild those connections on a stronger, more honest foundation. The drive was becoming a metaphor for the process of healing and growth. Each mile represented a step further away from the initial hurt and a step closer to a resolution. The car, a vehicle of my generosity, was now a vehicle for my personal growth and for the potential healing of my family relationships. The drive was becoming a metaphor for the process of healing and growth. Each mile represented a step further away from the initial hurt and a step closer to a resolution. The car, a vehicle of my generosity, was now a vehicle for my personal growth and for the potential healing of my family relationships. The setting sun cast long shadows, but in my mind, the path forward was becoming clearer. The next stage was the most crucial, the conversation, and I was ready to drive towards it, with the car keys firmly in hand. The initial shock of Sarah's message had subsided, replaced by a quiet determination. This wasn't about winning an argument or seeking revenge. It was about establishing healthy boundaries and fostering genuine connection. The car, a symbol of my love and support, had inadvertently become a symbol of my exclusion. Taking it back was a way of reclaiming my agency and signaling the need for a more respectful interaction. It was a difficult decision, but one I felt was necessary for the long-term health of our family relationships. The drive was providing me with the space and time to process my emotions and to strategize my approach. I was no longer operating purely on instinct. I was thinking critically about the underlying issues and potential solutions. The car itself, a practical gift, had become a catalyst for profound personal and relational growth. It was a reminder that sometimes the most valuable lessons come from unexpected places and through challenging experiences. The journey continued, each mile a testament to my commitment to understanding and resolution. The setting sun was a beautiful backdrop to this internal process, symbolizing the end of one phase and the beginning of another. I was ready to confront the situation head-on, not with anger, but with a calm, assertive demeanor. The car was my chariot, carrying me towards a conversation that would hopefully lead to a renewed sense of connection and respect. The initial feeling of being dismissed had been painful, but it had also ignited a fire within me, a fire of self-respect and a desire for authentic family bonds. The car was a tangible representation of my investment in their lives, and its temporary retrieval was a way of highlighting the imbalance that had emerged. It was a way of saying, my presence and the gestures of my love should be valued. The drive was becoming a journey of self-discovery, with the car as my faithful companion. I was learning to navigate the complexities of family dynamics with a newfound sense of purpose and clarity. The open road was a metaphor for the possibilities that lay ahead, even amidst the current challenges. I was determined to steer our family relationships towards a more positive and respectful future. The car, a symbol of my generosity, was now a tool for establishing boundaries and fostering healthier communication. And as the headlights cut through the deepening twilight, I felt a sense of quiet confidence. The conversation was imminent, and I was ready. The initial shock had given way to a strategic approach. The car was more than just a vehicle. It was a tangible representation of a relationship that needed recalibrating. My act of taking it back was a clear signal that something was amiss and that I was unwilling to accept a passive role in my own family's narrative. This journey was about more than just a Christmas visit. It was about asserting my value and demanding a level of respect that I felt had been eroded. The car, with its title and insurance still under my name, was a practical safeguard that had now become a powerful statement. It was a reminder that while I am generous, I also have boundaries, and that those boundaries have consequences. The drive was providing me with the mental space to process the emotional fallout and to formulate a plan for a constructive conversation. I was moving from a place of hurt to a place of empowered action. The car was my chariot, and the open road my path towards resolution and a stronger sense of self. The setting sun cast a warm glow, a stark contrast to the coldness of Sarah's message. But even in this challenging situation, there was a beauty to be found, the beauty of self-discovery and the potential for growth. I was determined to use this experience as an opportunity to redefine my role within the family, ensuring that my presence and my contributions would be acknowledged and appreciated. The car was the catalyst, but the real journey was within. And I was ready to navigate it, 1 mile at a time. The initial sting of exclusion had been profound, but it had also served as a wake-up call. My act of taking back the car was not about malice, but about reclaiming my dignity and demanding a more equitable exchange in our family relationships. The car, a symbol of my love and support, had been met with a message that felt like rejection. Now its temporary retrieval was a way of signaling the need for a more honest and respectful dialogue. The drive was a pilgrimage towards understanding, with the car as my steadfast companion. I was determined to uncover the true meaning behind Sarah's words and to establish clear boundaries for the future. The open road stretched before me, a metaphor for the unknown territory of reconciliation, but I was ready to navigate it with a calm resolve and a commitment to authentic connection. The fading light of the day mirrored the end of an era of unquestioning generosity and the dawn of a new phase of assertive self-respect. The car was my vehicle, but my own inner strength was my true guide. The initial shock of Sarah's message had been a powerful jolt, but it had also ignited a determination to understand and to be understood. The car, a symbol of my love and generosity, had become entangled in a web of unspoken feelings. Taking it back was a decisive action, a way of saying, I am not invisible and my contributions matter. The drive was a journey of introspection, with the car as my silent confidant. I was processing the hurt, but also strategizing for a constructive conversation. The open road was a symbol of the path ahead, a path that required courage, honesty, and a willingness to set boundaries. The fading sunlight was a poignant reminder that even in the midst of challenges, there is beauty and the potential for growth. I was determined to steer our family relationships towards a more respectful and connected future. The car, the means, but the true destination was a healthier family dynamic. I had arrived at the small town where Mark and Sarah lived. The car, which had felt like an extension of my anger and hurt, now felt like a neutral tool, ready for whatever came next. I parked it a few blocks away from their house, a deliberate choice. I didn't want to pull up in my punishment vehicle. I wanted to approach their door as a mother, albeit a hurt and determined one. I took a deep breath, the cold air filling my lungs. I clutched the car key in my hand, its cool metal a grounding sensation. This was it, the moment of truth. I walked towards their house, the familiar porch light casting a warm glow, a stark contrast to the chill I felt inside. I could hear muffled laughter from within. They were oblivious to the storm I was brewing. I knocked. The sound seemed impossibly loud in the quiet street. The door opened, and there stood Sarah, her eyes widening slightly in surprise. Behind her, Mark appeared, a question forming on his lips. "Mom, what are you doing here?" he asked, his voice tinged with confusion. Sarah's expression was harder to read. A flicker of something, guilt, annoyance, crossed her face before settling into a polite, almost strained smile. "Hi, Mom," she said, her tone carefully neutral. The air crackled with unspoken tension. This was the beginning of the confrontation. I forced a smile, trying to project a calm I didn't entirely feel. "Hello, Mark, Sarah. I wanted to talk. Can I come in? Mark stepped aside, gesturing me inside. The living room was cozy, decorated for Christmas with twinkling lights and festive ornaments. It felt like stepping into a scene I was no longer a part of. We sat down, the silence stretching uncomfortably. I looked at them, my son and his wife, the people I loved, who, it seemed, decided I wasn't needed. Mark, I began, my voice a little shaky. I got your message, Sarah, about me not needing to come this year. I looked directly at Sarah. I was hurt and confused. I wanted to understand why, and I also wanted to retrieve something. I held up the car key. Mark's eyes darted from the key to me, his brow furrowed. Sarah shifted uncomfortably on the sofa. "Mom, what's this about the car?" Mark asked. "I gave you that car," I said, my voice firming up. "The title and insurance are still in my name, and I've decided, for now, that I need it back." Sarah finally spoke, her voice quiet but firm. "We weren't trying to exclude you, Mom. It's just—" She trailed off, looking at Mark for support. He nodded, taking a deep breath. "Mom, it's complicated. Sarah's been having a really difficult pregnancy. She's on bed rest, and the doctor said no visitors, especially not for an extended stay like Christmas. We didn't want to worry you, and we thought it would be easier to just say you didn't need to come." My mind raced. A difficult pregnancy? Bed rest? This was news to me. "Why didn't you just tell me that?" I asked, my voice laced with a mixture of relief and frustration. "Why the vague message?" Sarah looked down at her hands. "I didn't know how to say it. I felt guilty that we couldn't host, and I didn't want to burden you with the details. I thought a simple, 'you don't need to come,' would be less painful than explaining everything." Less painful? It had felt like a rejection. "Sarah," I said, my tone softening, "I understand wanting to protect me from worry, but this hurt. It made me feel unwanted. We're family. We should be able to talk about difficult things." Mark reached over and took my hand. "You're right, Mom. We handled it badly. Sarah was overwhelmed, and I just went along with it. We should have been more direct. We're so sorry." Tears welled up in my eyes. It wasn't the rejection I had imagined, but a communication breakdown, born of stress and misguided protection. "I appreciate you saying that," I said, squeezing Mark's hand, "and I appreciate the reason. I was worried about you both, and I still want to help, even if I can't be here for the whole holiday." I looked at Sarah. "I understand about the bed rest. That sounds incredibly difficult. How can I support you from a distance?" Sarah looked up, a genuine smile finally gracing her lips. "Just knowing you understand helps. Maybe you could call more often, and if you're not staying for Christmas, perhaps you could visit for a few days after the baby is born. We'd love that." I nodded. "I would love that. And about the car?" I held up the key again. "I can leave it with you, of course, for essential trips, but I'll need to keep it for my own use and for the insurance. We can figure out the logistics." Mark chimed in. "That sounds fair, Mom. We can manage with public transport for short trips, and we'll need the car less now anyway." The confrontation had diffused, replaced by a tentative understanding. The key, once a symbol of my power and hurt, now represented a compromise, a bridge back to connection. We talked for another hour, the conversation flowing more easily now. I learned more about Sarah's pregnancy, her anxieties, and their financial concerns. I offered practical help, like ordering groceries online for them and setting up a meal delivery service. They, in turn, expressed their regret for the way they had handled the invitation. As I prepared to leave, a sense of peace settled over me. It wasn't the Christmas I had envisioned, but it was a step towards healing. "So," I said, standing at the door, "I'll be back for a visit once the baby is here. And next year, if you'll have me, I'd love to come for Christmas. But perhaps we can establish some clearer communication guidelines." Mark smiled. "Absolutely, Mom. We'll work on it." Sarah nodded, her eyes warm. "Yes, please. We'd love to have you." I drove away, the car keys now feeling lighter in my hand. The journey back wasn't filled with anger, but with a quiet sense of accomplishment. I had confronted the situation, understood the truth, and paved the way for a healthier relationship. The car was a symbol, yes, but the real victory was in the renewed connection and the clear boundaries established. The true gift wasn't the car, it was the opportunity for growth and understanding. The story wasn't over, but the immediate crisis had passed, replaced by a hopeful path forward. The car was mine again, for now, but the real prize was the mended relationship and the promise of future, more honest holiday gatherings. The act of taking back the car, while seemingly drastic, had served its purpose. It had forced a conversation that might otherwise have been avoided, leading to a deeper understanding and a more authentic connection. It was a testament to the fact that sometimes setting boundaries, even in difficult ways, is essential for the health of relationships. The car was a tangible asset, but the intangible benefits of honest communication and mutual respect were far more valuable. As I drove, I reflected on lessons learned, the importance of direct communication, the complexities of family dynamics, and the power of setting healthy boundaries. It was a challenging experience, but ultimately a rewarding one. The car was a symbol of my generosity, but my actions in retrieving it and then discussing the situation openly were symbols of my commitment to a healthy and connected family. The holiday season, though altered, had brought about a profound shift. It was a reminder that growth often comes from discomfort, and that true connection is built on a foundation of honesty and mutual respect. The car was back in my possession, but the real journey was towards a future where such drastic measures wouldn't be necessary. The open road ahead symbolized not just physical travel, but the ongoing process of building stronger, more resilient family bonds. The car was just a car, but the lessons learned were invaluable. And as I drove into the night, I felt a sense of optimism for the future. The initial message from Sarah, "You don't need to come this year," had been a catalyst for a difficult but ultimately transformative experience. It had pushed me to confront uncomfortable truths, to assert my needs, and to advocate for healthier communication within my family. The act of taking back the car was a bold move, a tangible manifestation of my hurt and my need for clarity. It wasn't about revenge, but about reclaiming my agency and demanding respect. The drive itself had been a form of therapy, allowing me to process my emotions and to strategize for a constructive conversation. I had envisioned a dramatic confrontation, but instead, I found a path towards understanding and reconciliation. The revelation of Sarah's difficult pregnancy and her own anxieties had shifted my perspective entirely. It wasn't a deliberate exclusion, but a communication breakdown fueled by stress and a desire to protect. This understanding was crucial. It allowed me to move past my initial hurt and to focus on offering support. The subsequent conversation with Mark and Sarah was difficult, but ultimately cathartic. We acknowledged the missteps, expressed our regrets, and reaffirmed our commitment to each other. The compromise regarding the car, retaining ownership for practical reasons while allowing them its use for essential trips, symbolized a rebalancing of our relationship. It was a recognition of both my generosity and my need for boundaries. The conversation that followed was open and honest. We discussed the importance of direct communication, the challenges of navigating family expectations, and the need for empathy, especially during stressful times. I learned that my well-intentioned generosity, without clear communication, could sometimes be misinterpreted or even create unintended pressure. This was a valuable lesson for me as well. The invitation to visit after the baby's birth and the renewed desire for my presence at Christmas next year were powerful affirmations. They signaled a genuine desire to mend the rift and to rebuild our connection on a stronger foundation. The car, which had initially felt like a symbol of my pain and power, ultimately became a tool for healing. It facilitated the conversation that was so desperately needed. The story of the car is a story about more than just a material possession. It's a story about the complexities of family, the importance of communication, and the power of setting boundaries with love and respect. It's a reminder that even when we feel excluded or hurt, there is often a deeper story unfolding, and that approaching such situations with empathy and a willingness to understand can lead to unexpected resolutions. The journey was far from over, but the path forward was clearer, brighter, and filled with the promise of renewed connection. The car was parked back in my driveway, a silent witness to the emotional roller coaster of the past few days. It was a symbol of my generosity, my hurt, and ultimately my strength. The holiday season had been disrupted, but the lessons learned were invaluable. I had learned to communicate my needs more effectively, to seek understanding before judgment, and to establish boundaries that protected both myself and my relationships. The car was a tangible asset, but the true treasure was the renewed sense of connection and the promise of a more honest and respectful family dynamic. The journey had been unexpected, but the destination, a place of greater understanding and stronger bonds, was well worth the drive. This experience was a powerful reminder that personal growth often stems from challenging situations, and that by confronting them with courage and empathy, we can emerge stronger and more connected. The car was a symbol of that journey, and as I looked at it, I felt a sense of quiet gratitude for the lessons it had helped me learn. The story of the car is a story of rediscovering family, boundaries, and the true meaning of connection. It's a narrative about navigating the complexities of relationships with honesty, empathy, and a willingness to grow. The car was the catalyst, but the real transformation happened within. And as the holiday season continued, I felt a renewed sense of hope and a deeper appreciation for the family I was a part of, imperfections and all. My journey with the car was a powerful reminder that sometimes the most significant gifts we give are not material, but the gifts of understanding, forgiveness, and clear communication. The car sat in my driveway, a silent testament to a Christmas that was anything but ordinary. It was a symbol of my hurt, my assertion of boundaries, and ultimately my commitment to the health of my family relationships. The initial sting of Sarah's message, "You don't need to come this year," had been a powerful catalyst. It had forced me to pause, to reflect, and to take action. My decision to retrieve the car, the one I had gifted them, was a bold statement. It wasn't about spite, but about signaling that my presence and the gestures of my love were not to be taken for granted. The drive itself was a journey of introspection. As the miles passed, I moved from a place of hurt and confusion to one of determined clarity. I realized that direct communication was paramount and that unspoken expectations could lead to significant misunderstandings. The revelation of Sarah's difficult pregnancy and her own anxieties added a crucial layer to the story. It wasn't a deliberate snub, but a communication breakdown fueled by stress and a misguided attempt to protect me from worry. This understanding was crucial. It allowed me to shift my focus from my own hurt to offering support. The subsequent conversation with Mark and Sarah was difficult, but ultimately cathartic. We acknowledged the missteps, expressed our regrets, and reaffirmed our commitment to each other. The compromise regarding the car, retaining ownership for practical reasons while allowing them its use for essential trips, symbolized a rebalancing of our relationship. It was a recognition of both my generosity and my need for clear boundaries. The promise of a visit after the baby's birth and the invitation to return for Christmas next year were affirmations of our shared desire to mend the rift. This experience was a profound lesson in the complexities of family dynamics. It underscored the importance of open communication, the need for empathy, and the power of setting healthy boundaries, even when it feels uncomfortable. The car was the vehicle through which these lessons were learned, but the real transformation was internal. As I looked at the car in my driveway, I felt a sense of quiet gratitude. It was a reminder that even in challenging times, there is an opportunity for growth, understanding, and the strengthening of familial bonds. The holiday season had been redefined, not by tradition, but by truth and a renewed commitment to connection. The car was a symbol of that journey, and as I prepared for the next chapter, I felt a sense of hope and a deeper appreciation for the intricate tapestry of family life.